That come every time. I'm sorry, you got to listen to the same intro speech. But, this group exists to help people on the path to financial freedom. There's no sales pitches or bait and switches. We're not going to sell you a timeshare, get on our brokerage or, whatever else. It really is to connect people, give you some information, and hopefully build some relationships out of here. I know everybody's shy. Nobody wants to talk to anybody, but that's okay. You guys showed up early. Stick around. We'll be hanging out a little bit afterwards too. So, somebody might ask a question that interests you. Reach out, make some connections. So it'll be fun. This one's gonna be a little bit different. Normally we have a great speaker and do some Q&A time. We're gonna have a panel this time, so this is gonna be fun. We're gonna do short-term versus long-term. It's been something we've been thinking about doing for a while, and it's a good topic. I get asked this all the time in the long-term side. We'll have some fun with it and go back and forth. I wanted to do a WWE theme and get up here and but I got shot down. So we're just gonna do a little presidential debate style. So again, if you're new to the group, I believe that the value really is the question and answer period, right? So I'm gonna say this a few more times before I bring these guys up, but please ask questions. It's the advantage of showing up in the room with folks that know what they're talking about, at least these guys. And get your specific questions answered. Guaranteed somebody else has it. You can get a lot of information online, right? Go read blog posts. There's a lot of stuff out there. But the question and answer period. This is not just to fill time. It's for you guys to be able to do it and help out. So get ready for that. A few housekeeping items. First off, I want to thank Christina is the director, master of operations here. Can we give Christina a clap? Wave, Christina. See, that was good. She puts all this together and does all the heavy lifting, so thank you for that. I didn't grab a flyer, so if you got a flyer, if you check it out on there, we got contact information on there. Ooh. John, am I too close to the other mics? No? I'll go over here. Oh, sweet. There's also a QR code on there too, so if most of you found us on Meetup. If you're not on our list, we don't send you anything other than just, hey, this is the next event. So there's a QR code on there for you to grab to make sure you get up to our next events. We got a bunch of stuff coming up, and it's also a good place to take notes. Again, we're gonna go for about 10, 12 minutes. We'll see. Sometimes Eric gets off on some tangents, so if he gets a little far off, might be 15 minutes. But we won't do any questions until we get through that period. So I'm sure something's going to come up. So grab a pen. We got pens back there. Write it down. Put it down somewhere else. So when we get to that Q&A time, you have that. We got drinks. Joey's back there, slanging the water and Jello shots, beers, whatever makes sense for you. So do that. Restrooms are out that way, right around the corner. And yeah, we'll have some fun. So without further ado, if you guys want to, let's bring these guys up here. Clap it up for these guys. Let's get them up on stage. So Eric Josephson, owner of Invest Idaho, Austin Anderson, owner of Leisure Lodging, and Matt O'Snick. Dang it, Matt, I practice. Yeah. I'm not going to say Oso. It's O'Sanicki. Yeah. Nailed it. Matt O'Sanicki from owner of Your Stay. Clap it up for those guys. Bring them on up. Regular people to financial freedom as possible. So I do that for free. My business is set up to do that, and that's what this group is set up to do. So I just wanted to plug that as well. And I was actually talking to a lending partner yesterday about it. He's like, man, my wife cringes when she hears financial freedom. And I was telling him how I described it to my wife too. It's not about boats and cars and cash. It's not about bling. I got 5 kids, and the way I describe it too is, hopefully we get some grandkids coming here. God forbid we have a grandkid that gets sick or something, and I can go spend, she can go spend months taking care of that kid. Oh, They should have showed up and been in the room anyway. Financial freedom to me is like, hey, I can go there and I can take care of those kids for a couple of months, and my wife can. We don't have to get back to our job on Monday, or I don't have to be stuck to a building, you know? Things like that. It's about options and freedom for me. So that's what I'm about, and that's why I'm here. Cool. Eric.
Hi, everyone. I am Eric Josephson with Invest Idaho Management and Realty. Yeah, pretty basic. I'm a native Idahoan. Lived in the Treasure Valley for 13 years now. Love it here. Wouldn't want to be anywhere else. I've got 3 little boys, a 7, 4, and a 1-year-old, so we are busy all the time with them, on top of running our management business, and my wife and business partner Jeff are here today to support me. I've been in property management sort of my entire life, unfortunately. I haven't been smart enough to figure out another way around it. So I grew up helping my dad manage his investment properties. I was knocking on doors, collecting rent when I was 14 years old, because I was 6'2" when I was 14 years old. So my dad thought people would respond to that. They didn't. Anyway, but I've worked with a couple other management companies around the valley, and we formed Invest Idaho Management in 2020. Very similar to Brian, I believe in real estate investing and figuring out a way just to set our lives up to live a life by design and on purpose, and that makes sense that we can do what we want to do with our time that's limited here. So, yeah.
Hello, everyone. I'm Austin Anderson, not related to Brian. No relation. I'm the owner of Leisure Lodging. We started in February 2020, right at the worst time to start short-term rentals, if anyone knows. But in that period of just over 3 years, we've been able to get up to about 57 listings right now, a few in the pipeline still, and that's across 5 different states in the U.S. And I mean, obviously my bio kind of explains it. We've hosted a lot of people. We've done a lot in the short-term rentals. Me and my wife are both Idaho natives. We met when we were about 2 years old. We didn't start dating then, don't worry. Met then, started dating around 20 years old, and now we have a 1.5-year-old and a girl on the way. So thanks for having me, Brian.
Awesome. Yeah, my name is Matt Osanicki. I'm the owner of Your Stay, along with my wife Kylie, who's in the house tonight. First off, very humbled to be here. Brian, thank you everybody, and thanks for having us. Thanks everybody for showing up. Hopefully that my intent is to give everybody a high ROI in their attention span tonight. So that's going to be the goal. And my story is essentially, I got to the pinnacle of my career, W-2 career, and I looked around and I was like, this isn't everything that I thought it was going to be. And I was longing for more, which I'm sure a lot of people can relate here. Maybe they're trying to make a transition from W-2 to financial freedom, or maybe they're trying to use real estate as a vehicle to achieve financial freedom. So I have found that helping others and just adding as much value as I can and using short-term rentals as my vehicle to do so, I found a passion in that. So that's a little bit about me.
Good stuff. Cool. All right, so we got 5 kind of areas that we kind of hashed out a little bit. They're questions that we get asked all the time, right? So from current clients, potential clients, and whatnot, hey, should I go long-term? Should I go short-term? So we're going to kick it off with those. We'll get them up on the board, but yeah, we'll do a little bit of a presidential debate style here. We'll see if it gets rowdy. We'll do some 30-second ad-libs too. So we'll just go 2 minutes on each side. Hopefully you guys get obviously some benefit in that and go over that. And then again, write down questions. I'm sure some will pop up, but we're not going to let you ask them until we go through these first 5. So even if it comes back to one of the first ones that we talked about, that's great when we do that Q&A. So the first one, I'm going to be the time guy. Christina said that wasn't really fair, but I think that's the home field advantage, that I get to have the clock. So we'll start with the first one with operating costs. So you guys can go first. I'll do a 2-minute clock. We'll go 2 minutes. And so tell us about operating costs for short-term rentals.
Operating cost. Check. Check. Okay, there we go. Operating costs, short-term rentals. Operating costs are so high when it comes to operating short-term rentals. And they are so high because you're always trying to keep your short-term rentals in a very high state, in a for sale status, if you will. And in doing so, you're paying for a lot more things than you normally would with a long-term rental. And the biggest thing that I would say is that when you have a long-term rental, you're paying for maybe the trash and the sewer, I think. Otherwise, if you don't pay those, then the state can take your house or something like that. So at a minimum, you're probably paying those things. But when it comes to short-term rentals, you're paying for the internet bill. You're paying for Netflix if you have Netflix. You're paying for the gas, the water, the electric. You're paying for everything. Furthermore, you have other things to consider as well. You've got to clean the home. So you have cleaning costs, you have restocking fees, and depending on how you structure the way you manage your short-term rental, or if you have a property manager manage it for you, can create a lot of costs. And those are substantially higher than long-term rentals. But the income can also be substantially higher too, if you do it the right way. And that's one of the reasons why I love short-term rentals, because if you handle it like a business, like what it's supposed to be, you can have a huge ROI in your returns.
Austin, you want to add?
Yeah. So I'll just add to that. I personally don't feel like, and I don't want to counteract anything you say, but a lot of times like cleaning costs and stuff like that and restocking fees, when it comes to restocking supplies in the home, I don't consider those as much of operating costs because of the fact that every time you do that, it gets paid specifically for that. And so when I'm talking with my homeowners, and especially newer clients, I don't even count those in our revenue numbers because I don't think it's necessarily needed, right? Just because the guest is paying for that and it's going straight to those costs. But I would definitely count all of the extra utilities and potential more repairs throughout the year. Just because you're in there a couple times a month, you're going to repair things more often than a long-term rental. That kind of thing, those are all going to be a lot higher as well. So
Nice. Good stuff. All right, I'll slowly start our clock. Yeah, I mean, I think you guys hit them. I mean, I think there's definitely a lower, generally speaking, on the long-term side. I think you kind of mentioned it too. I think management fees, is a big one. I know we're 8%. What do you guys charge management fees?
25 is
25.
about standard.
Right. So you're going to have higher costs. There's a little bit more, on the short-term side for sure. You did mention utilities as well. Upfront costs, I think, is an advantage for lower costs on the long-term side, right? So you're not furnishing upfront, all the kitchen stock and all that upfront. I know for us, we don't charge management fees until we actually have a tenant in place, kind of thing. So is that true? Do you guys do that too? I mean, you start. Okay. Oh, sorry. Yeah. I cut off
It's
mic.
your time.
Nope.
I don't want to take your time.
Don't take any more of your time. Insurance costs too, I think, for a landlord policy are a little bit less expensive from what I've seen too. And yeah, Eric, anything you want to add?
I think just in the reality of evaluating it when you're looking at it, there's with a single family home or a multifamily property in multifamily underwriting, they figure in your expense ratios usually about 30 to 35%. So on multifamily properties, you're going to have higher expenses. There may be HOA fees. On a single family home, you're going to know a lot of your operating costs up front when you close on the property, right? Because you're going to have your RE10, you're going to get the property inspected, you're going to know what it's going to cost. And again, it's kind of subjective to, am I buying a dump that I'm going to have to throw $25,000 in before it's habitable, or am I buying a turnkey property? So again, it's kind of dependent on your operating costs can fluctuate, but on a single family home, it can get down to as low as, if you're figuring in your taxes and your insurance into your mortgage payment, outside of that, it can be as low as just your management fee if the tenants are paying all of the utilities, everything else. So.
See, we're playing so nice so far. This is great. 30 seconds. Anything else you guys want to throw on operating costs?
I want to talk about furniture because that's like more of an upfront cost. And that's something huge to point out. And a lot of people don't talk about this, especially when you hear like gurus talking about it online. Purchasing furniture for an unfurnished property to turn it into an Airbnb is such a huge cost up front. We've furnished homes for as low as $10,000, but we've also furnished homes for upwards of $46,000. So figuring out how you're going to furnish a property and building that cost into your analysis is pretty important.
Yeah. Cool. Good. Sweet. Let's see. So we start this one. You get to start this one.
Okay. Yeah, I think the bonus, again, of living in Boise is your market variability is pretty low. And in fact, if you look back historically at the last 6 to 7 years, it's all been pretty positive until we've hit the last 2 to 3 years of where sales prices have hit. But the reality is when you look at market rent, it's raised anywhere from 5% to 20% over the last 5 years as well. And now we're slowing down to where that's capped off and slowed down a little bit. But the reality is in a city like Boise versus maybe a Kansas City or a Memphis, your market swings because of the vacancy rate here is on in Ada County with multifamily and single family combined right now just under 4%, according to NARPM's most recent report that they put out for Q1. So the swings here aren't going to be that big because there's so many people continuing to move here. Is it the same as 2020? No. Or 2021? No. It's definitely started to slow down, but with your vacancy rate that low, your rents aren't going to see, more than maybe a 5% swing annually going forward. So if you're in Memphis or Kansas City and some major layoffs or other things happen in other markets, your market variability can be a lot huger. And obviously, I think that plays more so into, short-term rentals versus long-term, where you can kind of predict that steady things are going to happen. Again, really specifically depending on the market you're in is where the biggest variabilities will be.
Yeah, we like variability when it's going up, and
Yeah.
we get to cash on that, right? Yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot. I mean, obviously, I like the consistency of knowing what my rent's going to be for the most part. The analogy I like to use too is, I was in the restaurant business for a little while when my kids were small, and it kind of hit me. There was a recession way back when too, and people, what's up? People, home field advantage. I could keep talking. People don't have to go out to eat, but they have to eat. So it's kind of the difference in my mind too. We need grocery stores. People have to eat, but they don't have to go out to eat. And so for me, I like to say too is people need to, they need to live somewhere, right? People are always going to need, we stick specifically. We don't really do low end. We don't really do super high end. People need somewhere to live, but they don't need to go on vacation necessarily. So in my mind, that variability, I like that consistency on the long-term side. So.
Yeah, I'll start on this one. So, I mean, market variability for sure. There's a ton of market variability in short-term rentals in a couple different aspects. Just to kind of tag along with what Brian's saying, no, not everybody has to vacation, but I would say, especially in Idaho, I would only say maybe 20% of our guests are vacationers. A lot of them are working in town or, moving here to waiting on their property to finish building or close or something like that, right? So it's a lot of those. We do get vacationers on maybe some of our more high-end properties and stuff, but market variability, though, as far as throughout the year, I mean, there's going to be a ton of fluctuation. I know I would say most of my properties in like January and February make 3 to 4 times as much in May to August time as they do in January and February, right? And so a ton of fluctuation throughout the year. And so whenever I'm communicating with a new homeowner or someone that hasn't done short-term rentals before, I make sure they fully understand this is a annual thing that we're looking at, right? When we get into January, February, that doesn't mean we're quitting. It's an annual thing, right? So.
Yeah. With short-term rentals, just to piggyback off that real quick, with short-term rentals, it does vary. So we like to give an annual report versus like a monthly report. All right, market variability. Let's break this down. There are 4 different kinds of markets for short-term rentals. There's mountain, city, beach, and vacation. Boise is a city market, meaning it's the most stable of all the short-term rental markets that we have. Like a mountain market, for example, you'll have a lot of weekend stays. But in a city market, you have people staying during the day and the weekends. So there's that. Furthermore, to go on with the long-term rental side, Boise is now becoming a name in everybody's back pocket. It's become a nationwide thing. So I see market variability impact. I see more people coming to Boise. I see it becoming like a smaller Denver in the future. We're building new roads. We're building new highways. We're building new resorts. So there, from an investor standpoint, a lot of fluctuation is going to come in. In 2020, in Boise alone, we had 600 short-term rental units. In 2022, today, it went upwards of 1,600. Now, with the onset of interest rates going up and money velocity slowing down, those things matter in the short-term rental market because people aren't traveling as much. So when the velocity of money started slowing down, people weren't traveling as much, so we got to a more stable market. In doing so, we're right now around like 1,333 short-term rental properties. So it's continuing to go up, and the more professionally managed that we can make those, the better product we're having for guests. So.
You have anything else? Market variability? Cool. I hope you guys are writing down questions because we're going to be going for it. We get the third one up. So vacancy periods. You guys get to start on this one. So vacancy periods. Go for it.
Vacancy periods. From the short-term rental side, it's occupancy. So it's completely different, right? The Boise market, and I'm just going to speak to Boise because that's where we're at right now. The Boise market, AirDNA right now has it around, I believe, 67%. But like Austin was saying, with short-term rentals, it fluctuates. So your properties could see anywhere from 40 to 60% in the winter, and then upwards of 80 to 100% in the summer. Like there are times where we have properties that are booked 100% of the time. So when it comes to short-term rentals, psychologically speaking, you want to have a great product, you want to have great pictures, you want to have great amenities, you want to have a great host that's going to communicate with you often so that you can keep your occupancy high and keep your nightly rate high.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to that. Yeah, I mean, it is based off of occupancy. You know, from what we've seen through most of the year, I mean, in Treasure Valley, March to October, November, you should be 75% plus. And then that December to February time, if you're getting 60 plus, like you're succeeding in this. But as long as you're priced right and stuff, I mean, it's going to still do really well even at those occupancy rates. So.
So I think, again, vacancy is really low in the Treasure Valley. So on a good cycle, you buy a home or you own a home, you have a vacancy come up, or you buy the home vacant. On a good cycle, 15 days vacancy out of 18 to 24 months. That's pretty much where you can plan on if you've got a great property that's ready to lease. Beautiful, and I think that's the one difference that we're seeing right now that actually is relatable between the two in a lot of ways. The beautiful home at $2,400, brand new, granite countertops, nicer floors, nicer finishes, it's gonna rent within 15 days. The 25-year-old home with the same countertops and same flooring, there's the reality of the worst case scenario side of things where maybe you're at 90 days out of those 18 to 24 months. So it's very stable and it's very steady. And again, the variability right now is kind of the property that you're managing. If you've got some low C-class apartments from $1,200 to $1,500 in Boise, you can have 15 people applying, you know, if the interest is there and will always be there for those. If you're managing a $3,000 home in Star or Eagle, probably better plan on a little bit more. So again, it's kind of dependent on the property, but the great thing is all the numbers are very positive.
Yeah, and I mean, just from the number standpoint, I mean, again, you know, I can regurgitate NARPM numbers and vacancy rates in Ada County, and well, actually I can't because I don't memorize the numbers, but I can get those numbers, and I think it depends on the property, you know, and I used to be able to spit those out quickly because people always ask me, and that's great. You know, I say it's an art and a science for the pricing, right? And there's a science to it, but when you do it every day, you kind of have that gut feel too. So I think what Eric said is definitely true, and I was imagining it's the same for you guys too. It's kind of what I talk to clients about when they ask, or when I send them to you guys if it's going to be a short term, is that I think you do have to make sure that that property's on point to make sure that you can limit that for sure.
I call it psychological warfare.
Oh, nice. That's exciting. Yeah, and I mean, I think the only thing we talk to investors about, you know, again, I like the consistency of it. We teach them to, you know, put aside 5% each month for vacancy periods, you know, so you can cover those couple of weeks. So I'm just curious too. I'm going to cheat and just violate all the rules because home field advantage. What do you put aside for occupancy or lack thereof for the year? I mean, is it a yearly number? How do you account for that? What do you have clients do? Is there a number? Is it more a yearly basis? I'm just curious.
I'm just trying to understand the question a little better. What do we have clients set aside?
Well, I mean, for like winter vacancies, you know, and whatnot. I mean, if, hey, summer's great and you're 75%, are you putting money aside to cover those costs in the wintertime if it's
I would say we're
getting
just
below?
upfront with our clients, and so I've got like a spreadsheet that shows what they're going to make each month projected as
Right.
when we underwrite deals. And I got to tell you, February's look terrible.
Right,
They're
that's what I
losing a
mean.
lot of
Yeah.
money in February,
Right.
right? But
Right.
then we look at the July and August months,
Right.
and they're just making money hand over
Yeah.
fist. So we leave that up to the clients. Personally, on my own personal short-term rentals,
Yeah.
we keep an emergency fund in their
Right.
own checking account,
Right.
and we just don't even touch it, and it just keeps growing.
Nice.
So
Cool.
we're very upfront with the numbers. We're very
Yeah.
upfront that it fluctuates, and it's on an annual basis.
Right. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I'll just add. I do the
Yeah,
exact same thing. I
Cool.
give them a monthly breakdown of the whole year,
Right.
and before I ever sign someone, I usually try to make sure as much as I can that they understand during that period, like they're gonna have to pay their mortgage themselves, right? And
Right.
so I wouldn't say I necessarily have like a percentage or a number.
Okay.
I tell them. I just give them the numbers and say, hey, this is what it's gonna look like.
Right.
So.
Sweet. Cool. All right, let's jump to number 4, monthly income ROI on the long-term side. I mean, I think some of these definitely overlap, you know, for sure. And I don't know if I have a lot else. I mean, we've kind of already talked about it. I think the advantages on the long-term side is that consistency with the monthly income. You know, doing cash flow analysis for owners, it's, you know, again, easier to project that out, or at least I feel. But at the same time, on the short-term side, when you have, the more data you have, the more accurate you can be, right? So I feel confident with those numbers because we've been doing it for years from that standpoint. But again, I think we've kind of mentioned, you know, it's actually also a downside, though, on the long-term side, is that it is stagnant, right? I mean, that's an advantage. Here, I'll give you guys a point, too. It's an advantage on the short-term side. You know, if we are in a lease, and, you know, we've had those over the last 2 years when, you know, it shoots up, we're not able to adjust that rate, right? So there's a double side on that, too, where it's nice to be able to have that consistency, but when that market does shoot up, we're locked into that lease price. So, yeah.
I just think it's kind of risk versus reward when you talk about ROI with long-term rentals and short-term rentals. And I think the great thing is a lot of smart people look at it and say, let's diversify and maybe have both, not to, you know, be too kumbaya up here with everybody. But I think it's just really a risk versus a reward. And the reality is, like Brian said, people have to have a place to live. And so if you're looking at a long-term play, 10, 15, 20 years, and you can establish goals and keep to those things, whether you're looking at an appreciation goal or a cash flow goal, you can look at both and have goals. Doesn't mean you're going to hit all, but it really comes down to where your taste for risk versus reward is.
So, when it comes to monthly income and ROI, a lot of times I compare this with owner, like, you know, when we're running numbers on a property, I'll usually take the owner through and compare long-term side versus short-term side and what would make more sense for them on this. And just from what we've found in the Treasure Valley, for the most part, other areas are a lot higher. Treasure Valley's right about 2 to 3x. Annually, you're gonna make 2 to 3 times your monthly rent in short-term rental rents, right? So not including cleaning fees. Again, like I said, I don't really count those, but now again, operating costs are higher, so you're not keeping 2 to 3 times. But in general, that's about what we've found. And then of course, it has to be a long-term play because of those startup costs, like you were saying. If you spend $40,000 and you only make 2 times, you're not going to make that back in 1 year if you quit after the year, right? So, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Great stuff there. So let's talk a little bit about short-term, midterm, and long-term. Short-term rental is anything 30 days and under. Midterm is anything 30 days to 6 months, and long-term is 6 months beyond. So depending on your risk level, like what you were talking about, and your appetite for your cash-on-cash return should say a lot about what kind of investments you want to get into. With short-term rentals, what I love about short-term rentals is there's no ceiling to your income. There's also no floor to your income either, right? But with the long-term rentals, you know, you're capped. Like what the market is asking is what you're going to get for rent. With midterm rentals, it's a little more risky, but you know what you're getting each month when you get a tenant in. And then with short-term rentals, you don't know if you're getting people in or not. That all goes down to your appetite for risk, how you underwrite your deals, and how you move forward with your short-term rentals. And like you were saying, we have some clients that have turned long-term rentals into short-term rentals. Those don't necessarily perform the best because they're not built from the ground up as a short-term rental. But those are things to consider when you're looking at your monthly income and ROI.
Anything else you want to add to that? Yeah, it's actually, we turn a few short-term into long-term, and it's always sad. I mean, it's a long conversation on selling furniture, but once it works. I'm part counselor. I know, I send them to you. I'm like, I know guys that'll buy furniture. I know, so. All right, let's do the fifth one, and then we'll do some questions. So, tenant rights. So, again, I know I'm supposed to go through some positives on the long-term side, but, there are some negatives too. I mean, tenants have rights, right? So, which is good, we are a little bit more in the wild, wild west in Idaho, but that's fine, right? I think, possible eviction period on the long-term side, can be tough. If we can't, obviously we have to give notice 24 hours to get in to do repairs, so it's not really a difficult, part of that. But I think the positive too is just, with our lease and through our inspection process for damages and whatnot, the security deposit disbursement, we have that in place that we can handle that regardless of what the tenants have done. So what about tenants' rights? Anything else?
I think with tenants' rights, I look at it this way with long-term and short-term. Maybe we deal with more tenant rights on the long-term side, and on the short-term side, you're dealing with much different tenant expectations. So which one do you like managing better? I just joked with Kyle earlier today, how many times have you reset the Wi-Fi this month? Or do you want to go through an eviction? And again, what it boils down to is if you own a short-term or a long-term, a lot of these, how passive do you want your income to be? If you're okay with a little bit more passive income on the long-term side of things, if you're okay with not quite being as passive on the short-term side, those rights, those expectations, you're weighing either one. But the great thing is you can mitigate all of that with a great property management company. Obviously what we're all doing and trying to do for our clients. So I think that's the important thing is we know what the tenant's rights is and we know how to protect your liability. And so that's where we kind of take that phase out of it for our owners not to have to worry about.
So yeah, on our side, basically they don't have rights. Anything under, I believe 28 days, and it's 28 to 30 right in there. I usually don't have to deal with it, luckily, but anything under 28 days, we can go over there and say you gotta go, and they gotta go, right? If anything's going wrong, they're breaking house rules, anything like that. When you start getting into the midterm rentals, that's where it's a little bit more, you're dealing with long-term rental rights with a less long-term person in the house. And so that's typically why at that point your rate is going to be a lot higher than a long-term rental, right? I'll usually be like 2 times what they would pay for a long-term rental on a midterm rental. So that's when they start getting more rights and stuff.
Yeah, those are all great things. I will say for those who may have a question about how our guests screened in short-term rentals, when a guest signs up on Airbnb, VRBO, they have to create a profile, and that profile puts them through a screening process. So whether they've broken the law and done anything. So a lot of that is handled up front when you have guests that are coming into your home that you've never had any interaction with. And then furthermore, there's an even deeper screen that you can do that I'm not going to get into right now, but you can vet your guests as they come in. And I just want to take this in a little different route and just talk a little about regulation, since you guys have really touched on tenant rights. Regulation's a big deal. It's a good thing and it's a bad thing. And it depends how it's managed. And here in Boise, they finally came out with their first bit of regulation last May, I believe it was. And they have a couple requirements just for you to get a license. It's nothing, it's not a big deal. But once they take an inch, they're gonna take a mile. And there are some places of the country that do regulations really well. There's some places that do it very poorly. I just got back on a visit to Florida. They have a lot of regulations in place for short-term rentals, and they're great regulations. South of 30A, they allow short-term rentals. It's no holds bar, make as much money, provide a good product. North of 30A, it's all for people who want to live there. So regulation can be a great thing. It can offer guests a more professional product, but it can also be bad. So we'll see what happens here in Boise.
Yeah, nobody's actually gotten those licenses yet, right? From what I've heard.
It took us 10 months to get licenses back from
Yeah.
them after repeatedly getting with
Yeah.
them, and
Right.
a very long time.
It's all, yeah, we can have laws on the books, but adherence. Yeah, I mean, I guess I should read my notes too, but yeah, and I think that, eviction is always a scary word, for potential clients. Like, when we first started years ago, I was like, oh, I want to do an eviction guarantee, but I was nervous. We're batting 1,000. Like, we've never actually had to evict anybody because we do a great screening, process and be able to do that. So now we do have that guarantee because I'm confident with who we place in there. But, it's good that they have rights. But so yeah. All right, let's do some Q&A. We're gonna turn it over to you guys. So we got a couple of gift cards we'll give away for the best question. Like, again, I'm just like begging you. Like, this is the fun part. So Christina is gonna have a roaming mic. So she's soft spoken, but if you talk without that mic, she will hit you with it. So just make sure that raise your hand. She'll come on over and give you the mic just for the folks on YouTube that are listening too. So
Okay,
got one
thanks.
over
We
there.
got two over here, but I actually had one for you, the short-term rental guys. You were talking about under 28 days, tenants don't have rights. Is that just this state, or is that nationwide?
Yeah, so there are a lot of states that as soon as they step foot on the property, they have tenant rights, and you have to go through eviction process, even if they stay one night. I try to stay away from those from those states as much as possible. California, that's yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's why, I mean, especially talking about regulations, you always want to know about regulations in an area before you start short-term rentals. And Idaho is very friendly to us. And they're very friendly to innkeepers' rights, which is what you would have for anything under 28 days.
Okay. All
I
right.
think that's something that we can all agree on both sides. Don't have rental properties in Washington, Oregon, or California. So that's it on both sides. Short term, long term, mid-term, nothing. That's it.
Gotcha.
I really don't have anything to add. You hit the nail on the head with that. So
All right, Logan's got a question.
Okay, I have two. First is I'm actually rehabbing a home right now that I'm considering making short-term or mid-term or both. So have you guys done like a hybrid strategy before where, as you were saying, through the winter months, not as good for short-term, you try to do mid-term during the winter months, the slower months, and then bring it back into 28 days or less in the summer months?
good question. First off, I'd like to point out that the first two questions were short-term rentals, so 2 points for the good guys. Yeah, that's a good question, and there are multiple strategies to make that happen. And I'll just give you one off the top of my head that's come to us over managing properties for a while and talking to other people, is that you can open your calendar up for 3 months on the short-term rental side, like let's say Airbnb, and then in doing so, you can open anything beyond that on like Furnish Finder to get in those longer bookings, especially when it starts to come to like August, September, October. Closing those months down on Airbnb to allow room for a midterm person to come in during the winter months is definitely an option.
And those calendars integrate, correct?
You can set them up to integrate. Yeah.
Okay.
Luckily with Furnish Finder, no one can just book. They have to like request, and then you have to accept them in, right? So if it's not available, you just tell them it's not. But what I would add to that though is actually all of our properties that we do both. We do midterm and short term, and we just price it to where we're not. Or we price it and set it up to where we're not getting like really short-term bookings out very far. So like 1 night, 2 nighters, like we don't even allow those more than 30 days out. And that really helps promote midterm bookings to come in during that time. And then if those don't come in, then we can start filling those gaps with those shorter bookings.
Okay. And then lastly, with this same property, any strategies you guys have to furnishing it? I mean, the last thing I really want to do is go, garage sale hunting and like, do you have any strategies to like bulk buy used or, priced right furniture? and kitchen equipment?
I would say not really, but that's because I hire everything out when it comes to setup. I just hired my first full-time person that does it, but I don't have anything to do with the actual setup side. So I wish I had a better answer for you on that.
I'll try to give you my best answer because we furnish almost all of our properties for our clients. And we spend a lot of time figuring out where the cheapest and best quality product is, because you do not want the cheapest products in there. It's got to take good pictures, and the value has to be there when the guests come back, because if a bed breaks or something feels flimsy, they're not going to give you a good review on the value. So we find that a lot of our amenities, like, will come from Target, for example, like pillows, soaps, things of that nature. We get with local mattress companies who are gonna give us deals because we're buying them from bulk all the time. We actually just got set up with a third-party vendor called Host GPO. It's not a plug for them at all, but they have a lot of cheap products on there. We source most of our quality products actually from Facebook Marketplace. So a lot of the bigger tables, the nicer furniture that is just going to be thousands of dollars to buy brand new, we'll source locally first. There's a lot of great people in the Valley that have great products. And then the rest of it, I mean, you're just going to have to get on Wayfair and Amazon.
Along that, I mean, obviously you guys have, I would say, some sort of service fee for furnishing.
Yeah, everyone's gonna laugh when we say this, but we charge $500 to $800 to furnish a property. It's super low, but we come at it from a team standpoint. Like, we're on the same team, so we're invested in this property just as much as you are. And we go out and we buy all the furniture, we set it all up, and then we invoice you at the end. So it's very much a team-based thing when it comes to short-term rentals, because we want it to succeed just as much as you do.
If you're going to Target that much, my wife could be a buyer for you. She's there like 3 times a week, so if that would help. And
Is she
also,
looking for work?
by the way, there's going to be more short-term questions because we're like the stable relationship, right? Like, I'm not going to trade. We're like my 20-year marriage. You guys are like that crazy college girlfriend that's like, high and low. So you're going to have more
We make real
questions.
estate sexy.
Can we cut Brian's mic?
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Well, you can't cut my mic.
All right. Matt, you were touching on, like, my big question is, what direction do you see the city of Boise going in all rental markets? I mean, it does seem like they are trying to regulate short-term rentals. Sounds like they're trying to get maybe a little bit more limitations on application fees and things like that. So just want to hear both sides.
I'll start, and you guys can finish where you feel. Where should I start? First, so we're a part of this, the Rob Built host campers, and we get a lot of inside information there because they don't post these things on, like, VRBO and Airbnb. And right now they're doing a lot of shadow banning on properties, meaning that they're not giving the conversion rates to some properties that are doing poorly, because, as you know, in this downturn, companies like Vacasa aren't doing so well. They're reporting negative numbers quarter after quarter. And for short-term rentals, we're a national, international company, unlike long-term where you just have to worry about the Boise market. So with that being said, Airbnb, for example, as a company, is trying to weed out some of the not so great properties. So where I see this going in the future is that the properties that can stand out, the properties that are giving the guests the best value as far as rooms and what your market specifically wants, are doing the best, are going to continue to the best, especially when regulation comes in. If you're out there, and this is for everybody in the audience, if you're managing your own short-term rental and regulations are starting to come down and you don't know what to do, go ask a property manager. They're going to give you the information for free. They'll tell you everything that they know. Take them out for coffee. Just pick their brain, and it'll help you keep afloat as the market changes, because you never want to build a product that you think is going to do with the market. You got to listen to what the market wants.
So the city of Boise has just introduced a couple new things. The city council just approved something within the last 2 weeks that is initial approval for some potential laws coming down the road. They just did a cap on late fees, or they're trying to do a cap on late fees. There's no teeth behind the bill because it's basically regulated by what someone deems as necessary work for the late fee. What was the word, Jeff? It was,
Have it all itemized and
yeah.
be able to
but it's reasonable. Basically, there's the term reasonable. So it's creeping in where Boise has traditionally, like Brian said, been forever the wild, wild west. Property management companies aren't regulated through brokerages here. That may be something coming down the pipeline sooner than later that I wouldn't be surprised that may not be the worst thing necessarily. It's pushing more. Boise's obviously capped application fees. They're trying to do more and more, but none of it really has a whole ton of teeth. I mean, I would still put that we're in a 9 out of 10 place to manage and own investment property, even as much as creeping in. We're just so far away from where some of the craziness is in Portland or LA or San Francisco or any of those places. So it's creeping that way, but honestly, sometimes some of those things are good, right? Because tenants obviously are people too, and there should be possibly there is some bad players out there who don't take care of their tenants and do discipline them or not treat them well because they're reporting issues. So I think some of those things are good. It just can't get too crazy like it has other places.
Yeah, and I think the city of Boise is definitely different than the state from what I've seen. I can relate it to just being in the same boat in Washington and seeing the city of Seattle and kind of going, oh man, those guys are crazy, and raccoons have more rights in Seattle than people do, and I got stories, but and then it kind of slowly got into the state. I think our state legislature is much more pro business, pro be able to do that. We're members of NARPM, the National Association of Residential Property Management, so they're actually going to be putting in a lobbyist too to kind of help. And the thing that they're kind of pushing, which I agree with, is like, again, I'm all for tenant rights. We want to make sure that we take care of people, but less regulations, but more possibly licensing. More of a higher standard to get into the business, to be licensed, to be able to prove that you're going to be above reproach and do that, unless. Because that's the regulation side is where Washington and Oregon and California have gone, and it's like we were actually at a regional conference which was in Boise a couple weeks ago, and we were talking to some folks in Washington, and Karen, our lead PM, was telling them, she can actually have conversations with our tenants. She can actually email them and solve problems with them, where in Washington or you can't even do that. Like, you just have to send notice. That's it. You're late rent, send notice. You can't send an email and say, hey, can we work this out? And so these gals were they're pulling their hair out because they want to help these tenants and they're not allowed to, and so my thing is we're going to try to push for more, less regulations, but more, again, let's be licensed, let's be brokers so that we can, weed out some of the riffraff, so to speak. So that was a long answer. Who's next, Christina? There you go.
Carlos, guys, thank you for allowing me to ask a question. I have two questions, and much like Logan, I've also got a property that I'm currently working off with my wife and another investor. As far as a short-term, mid-term, do you guys have a formula for specific furniture, amenities in specific areas? So like Southeast versus North End versus Eagle versus CUNA? I mean, or do you guys just pretty much have the same formula, same style of furnishing?
So yeah, good question. Each area is going to be a little bit different. I've found, for me and to help, a homeowner get the most success out of their property, it comes down to the individual property, the layout of the property, how you actually set it up inside, how well you do it. I mean, to kind of, tag onto what Matt was saying, the actual setup of the property is probably the most important thing. Location would be probably second most. So what people see in the photos and what they see as to what they're receiving inside that property is going to be your number one thing as to how well it does. And then locations next, then they might start looking, oh, I want to be close to this, or I want to be over here, that kind of thing, right? So hopefully that answers your question, but it's very individual for each property.
Yeah, let's talk about some ROI notes on this, on what makes a good property. So you want the most guests as possible, right? But you also don't want to put so many people into a home that they don't have a place to sit anymore. So for us on our properties, we like to put as many queen beds in as we can, because if they're all queens, then all the sheets are the same, all the blankets are the same. When our cleaners go to wash it, their time is saved, and we don't have to like match sheets and linens to other beds. It's all the same. And back to your point on making things the same as the pictures, that's super important. When you go to McDonald's, you order a cheeseburger, you expect it to look like the cheeseburger. Like they have the exact same formula each and every time. So we want to make sure that that is accurate with our listings and our photos. If something changes in our photos, we need to make sure we change the pictures of the photos. And then furthermore, however many guests we have in a property, we need to ensure that we have the right amount of seating and space. So the living room can seat everybody, the kitchen table can seat everybody for dinner. Those things, in our opinion of furnishing a lot of properties ourselves, have been the most important when it comes to guest interaction and their value of the property. Not specifically a theme though. All of our themes are based on the property. If it's a modern new build, we're gonna put a modern theme in it. If it's a farmhouse, if it's older, we're gonna try to match the property so it feels cozy when you get in there. If you've got right angles, here's another one. If you have right angles, put plants in there. Like it makes the home feel more cozy.
Still on that question, do you guys find that the midterm style home has a specific clientele versus the short term in terms of, again, amenities? Like you're not gonna have a pool table in a midterm, I'm assuming, right?
Right.
Or is that something that you guys consider?
For me, midterm, I'll just be real quick. For me, midterm, 2021-22 was huge for midterms.
Yeah.
There was a lot of traveling nurses because the federal government was handing money out like candy to companies to have people travel. It's not so much the case anymore. But the ones that are traveling, they're here for work. So they're not trying to stay in a 4-bedroom home. They're trying to stay in a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom studio. So considering the person who's doing the midterm stay when you furnish a home.
So surprisingly, I'd say a little bit different than that, but I get a lot more contractors from like Micron, people coming to work on places like Walmart, you know, just bigger companies in the area that are bringing people to town for 2 or 3 months at a time. The biggest thing I've found that those people are looking for would be like a TV in every bedroom, because they want they'll have 4 or 5 guys staying in a house together. They want to be able to hang out in their own room. So TV, possibly a desk to work at, and just making it feel the most comfortable that you can if you're going to be kind of stuck in that small space trying to get away from everybody else in the house, as well as possibly more hangout areas in the home. So like the ones that we've turned the garage into no longer parking, it's more of like a hangout. We actually do pool table, you know, maybe air hockey or basketball hoop or something like that. The one we just most recently did, we did foosball table, pool, basketball hoop, TV in the garage with 2 couches, like made it like a really good hangout area. They love that because they can just still kind of get away from their coworkers for a little bit.
Awesome. And if I can, so this was my second question. I guess that was 1A. Second question was in terms of the midterm market, do you guys have a specific clientele that you're attacking? Everyone knows, well, anyone that has done any research on the midterm knows about the traveling nurses, and that's kind of phasing out from what I understand. I don't know whether that's true or not, but are there other avenues that you guys are looking at if you're focused in midterm? I mean, I know the doctors, perhaps a displaced insurance lost payee or of some sort.
I am a wholehearted believer that short-term rental is different than midterm rental is different than long-term rental. You have to have different systems in place to maximize the ROI on what you're trying to achieve. That being said, I don't know as much about midterm rental as Austin does, so I'm just gonna let him finish this part out, because we do midterm stays on leases, for example, but I just don't have as much experience as Austin.
So yeah, I mean, to answer your question, I've actually gotten pretty lucky with midterm rentals. In the beginning, I got a few pretty good ones with some different companies that actually hire contractors for places like Micron and Simplot and stuff like that. And so now they just reach out to me anytime they have new contractors coming into town. That's been really good, as well as, yeah, insurance for people that aren't able to stay in their home is really good. There's I can't think of the name of the companies right now, but there's a few companies that you can go list your properties on for that specific reason. And then they'll just call you up every once in a while, be like, hey, we need some people in 3 days, we need them into this house. Can you do it? So I still get a few of those as well.
So I define short term under a month and midterm like 1 month to 6 months, right? And I just know from my experience, a year and a half ago, you know, we would get a lot of folks coming in, hey, I'm moving from California, I just need a few months, I don't want to pay that for short term, I don't want to be in a 6 month, and so there was some of that. I don't get any of those calls anymore. The only time I talk about it is with owners. They're like, what about a midterm? I heard traveling nurses. I'm like, no. Like, it's a small market. I mean, you know, again, I don't have a lot of data to back that up, but just the amount of phone calls, I get nobody asking for a 2-month or a 3-month. I mean, I know they're out there. I'm not getting a lot, you know, whereas I got tons of people that want to rent homes. So
There's
again,
an industry for midterm rentals, and there's some people in the valley that specifically cater to midterm rentals, and networking with companies like what Austin's doing is
that's a
the
good way
route
to
to
do
go.
it. Yeah, for sure. Getting that inroad.
I'll just share. Surprisingly, like I'm surprised to hear that because I would say 40 to 50% of my current reservations are midterm. Yeah.
Like a specific like time period? Is it 1 month? Is it 2, 3?
It's usually a month and a half.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So closer to that month than
Closer
2,
to
3, 4
yeah.
months.
Okay, this is gonna be for both sides, so everybody gets to answer. This is something that I've debated since we moved here a couple years from California. We've got both, well, we've got mainly long-term rentals, but they're all out of state in Texas. They've done well for us. We've got some short-term rental exposure with our house in McCall that we short-term rental out when we're not using it. But we have zero investment exposure in the Treasure Valley yet, and we've wanted to invest locally. We've struggled over the last couple of years on the long-term side, finding things that actually like pencil out. And the short-term side, you know, we're very interested in doing more there. So I'm just curious from both sides, from the long-term side, looking ahead, if people are interested in long-term investing in the Treasure Valley, where you guys see value or opportunity, and this could be, you know, either from a type of investment property or a geographic area within the Treasure Valley, and then similarly on the short-term side, where you guys see value looking ahead, either the type of property, areas within the Treasure Valley, so that for those that are actually looking to do something locally, you know, how they can better filter their, you know, what they're looking for.
I mean, I'll kind of tell you what I tell a lot of folks that call me a lot too. There's certain areas that we really like right now that do pencil out a lot better. You know, when we have homes all across the valley, certain areas that I think really do well, again, from a sales to rent ratio right now is like South Meridian and South Boise, south of 84, kind of not all the way down to Cuna, but those properties from a sale price to what we're getting in rental rates do pretty well. You know, there's a lot of new construction that's attractive on a sales price in Nampa and Caldwell, but they just don't perform as well on the rental rate side. And then, you know, it's tough. I mean, good luck trying to find something in the city of Boise or Eagle that's going to, you know, pencil out. I mean, again, you know, when we talk about monthly projections, yearly projections, and more, you know, we tell investors to, you know, appreciation is the icing on the cake. Don't put that into your projections. But at the same time, you know, I don't have a crystal ball, but I you know, talk to people about this every single day. You know, we're really big on this valley in the next, you know, 3, 4, 5, you know, plus years. I mean, with the investment that other companies are moving in here, we think it's a great long-term, you know, investment in this area. You know, I mean, Costco spends a lot more money than I do on where to, you know, put their businesses and whatnot. And I think there's a lot of good signs from that standpoint. So.
If you look at the institutional money that's coming into Boise, you kind of have to hedge your bet and say, if American Homes for Rent is developing 3 more build-to-rent subdivisions in the valley, probably a little bit smarter than I am for sure. So their chief economist, wherever they're pointing things, and you know, the expansion that's going on with Micron, like Brian said, where companies like Costco are looking at putting more and more of the stores here, they have a better eye on it. Is it easy to cash flow at the moment? No, there are places that have better bang for your buck. Cuna, Cuna, and like Brian said, there are areas that are harder. Caldwell, Nampa's a little bit harder to pencil because the taxes are a little bit higher in Canyon County because of some of the levies there. So it's not easy, but again, if you're looking at a long-term strategy, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, then I think you'll be in a good position. It just really depends on where your goals are and what you're trying to achieve, and again, where your risk versus reward taste for is. But a lot of the big money is saying we'll be double, triple what we are in 20 years right now. So it's, it seems like a pretty safe bet, but like Brian said, I don't have a crystal ball, unfortunately.
So, yeah, on the short-term rental side, I think at this moment in time, the only way to make it work would be if you're willing to make it work, right? You can't be the person that buys it and then tries to like skimp your way into listing it as a short-term rental. That's just not going to work right now. The OTAs, online travel agencies, like Matt was saying, like they don't like those properties. They don't want to show them, so they're not going to get booked as much. So really, right now in the Treasure Valley, there, the number of listings has gone up so much that now you really have to stand out. But if you can stand out, if you spend the time, spend the money, and really make your place stand out, it's going to do phenomenal. If you're not willing to do that, you're kind of playing with fire there, where you're competing with so many other properties that one month you might do great and the next month you might not. So that's where I personally think it's at with short-term rentals.
I'll just pop in there too, and that's the same on the long-term side. We had a bunch of homes that were built 05, 06, right, and then it tailed off, and then 2015, 2016, ton of homes, and then obviously the last couple years, right? And so we have builders that are, going straight to the rental market. So if the home, skimping doesn't work on the long-term side either. So, it doesn't have to be brand new, but those homes that are much older, East Meridian, West Boise, in the bench that, they'll fall behind. You can't just roll out, that thing and post it. It doesn't have to have, it don't be granite countertops, but you got to be clean and functional and because you're competing against new homes, right? So same thing.
All right, I'll try to keep this as short as possible, but I do a lot of acquisition side as a realtor, and speaking with investors and clients, we talk about this often. And it's the same for long-term as it is for short-term. You're trying to buy in a location, you're trying to buy for appreciation. It's not a short-term game, it's a long-term game. So just having the ability to know that you're gonna hold on to these properties 5, 10, 15 years from now and where the market's gonna be. I know I mentioned earlier that this place could potentially be a small Denver in 10, 15, 20 years. So identifying the locations that are gonna have the highest property value, like the Micron building going up, the water rights coming through in Southeast Boise, the highways going in by Amazon. Keeping those things in mind first when you purchase is super important. When we're buying short-term rentals for clients, we're buying a lot of brand new homes because we take a lot of like the capital expenditures into consideration too. So if a client's gonna own a home for 5, 7, 10 years, he's gonna have a lot lower capital expenditure costs. And in this market, you can buy a 70-year-old home for the same price as you could buy a brand new home in some cases. Like we just bought a brand new 5-bedroom home for $525,000. Like we crushed it. It was awesome. And that place is going to rent out phenomenally for our client. So keeping location in mind. And if you are getting a long-term rental because that's the model you want to go with, even if you're losing $100 a month on cash flow, like you're saving at least that in your tax depreciation at the end of the year. So just holding out for that long-term game and understanding that you are in this for an investment and just finding those locations.
It's 8:10, so we got to wrap up here in a few minutes. I know we started a minute late, but we always try to finish at 8. But we can't leave unless Bodie asks a question.
Yeah, Bodie's got a question, then we got 2 gift cards to give away.
Okay, so we've all seen the prices for property in Ontario, Oregon, but we all don't want to own long-term rentals there. Do you think there's a play for short-term in Ontario? That way you don't have to deal with the tenant landlord stuff.
Is there, so I'm understanding the question right, is there a play in Ontario?
Yeah, for short-term.
I gotta be honest, as far as ROI goes, Boise does the best. I look at AirDNA. I'm a very data analytic driven person, and I can't speak on Ontario. I know the properties here work really well here in Boise, unless you can speak on Ontario. I cannot. Yeah. If I'm trying to go outside, like to another place like Ontario, Idaho Falls or something like that, like I'm looking even further. I'm looking at the Smoky Mountains. I'm looking at Joshua Tree. I'm looking at Florida. Like if I'm really looking for ROI, I'm gonna go get ROI.
Let us know how it goes, Bodie.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. Like, yeah, personally, I don't know anything about Ontario short-term rental rates just because I haven't had a client reach out to me with a property there yet. I mean, both of us can look into that, right? Like, that's something that we can easily research and find out. It's just not something we have knowledge of right now. So.
Last question.
All right, Kylie's got one.
Oh, she's going to give Matt a softball.
No. You guys had a huge conversation about ROI, but you never gave us any percentages. So I know you guys are all investors. What do you look for an ROI for long-term versus short-term?
Again, I'm going to give you an answer you don't like because I do love numbers. I love crunching numbers. I love figuring it out. It's just I don't like rules of thumb. You know, you go in bigger. It's like everybody's got this rule of thumb, like 20%. You got to hit. I don't like it because it's. It depends on the property. It depends on their goals. So, I mean, it's been so long. I don't use those rules of thumb. And for me too, you know, we consider ourselves advisors and not, you know, we don't do sales. We do advising because salesmen take your money and advisors make you money. And so we do it individually. So I know that's not a good answer. Maybe you guys have a better rule of thumb that you use.
I think, you know, a lot of our clients look for, hopefully, on the upside of things, on long-term rentals, you're lucky if you're 7% cash on cash return. Probably realistically, you might be closer to 4 or 5%, which is why a 2 to 3% swing in interest rates can make a huge difference in the viability if prices are staying the same. But I think, like for me, 5% is a safe bet. On a long-term rental, you can't get a 5% return at the bank, and I don't put my money in the stock market. So for me, that's kind of a safe bet, long-term play. And like Brian said, we don't ever plan on the appreciation, but I think if you're looking at a crystal ball and looking out of where Boise might be going, then you kind of say to yourself, I'm going to plan on over the course of the next 20 years, probably be able to figure in a 10 to 20% appreciation on the property. You know, that's a long-term play annually, again, sort of a slow return, but that's probably the reality of where it is. And I think that's where the bigger institutionals, where they're buying or they've been buying multifamily properties at 3 to 5% cap rates, which is a little lower than what your cash on cash return. That's your your single family homes are probably maybe a 3 to 4% cap rate as well. So that's normally where about the majority of them are. But yeah, I would hope for a 5 to 7% cash on cash return.
Okay. Well, you talked about cap rate. A lot of the so I do cap rates in mine as well. It allows me to find good deals on Zillow. I can go on Zillow and I can plug into my calculator the price of a home and the income it's supposed to make based on AirDNA, which is a leading software platform that aggregates data. So it's real-time data that it uses on actual numbers on properties here in Boise. So a lot of the properties that I find that are upwards of the 9 cap, which is amazing to find, those are the properties I like to attack. And I take a very active role with my clients in trying to find a percentage or an ROI for them to hit, because it's one of my personal goals to have one of my clients be one of the top performers in Boise on the AirDNA page. There's like 10 of the top properties. So I take a very active role with my clients on what they could expect percentage-wise, and we always buy homes that will be a long-term rental as well, because you always have to have that plan B. You never know if regulation is going to come through and just tear your short-term rental apart. But with that being said, you were talking about 3-4 cap. I'm talking like 7 and 9 cap on properties, and we have low and high sides. We could see what a really great property does, and we try to be a leader in the industry when furnishing and setting up properties. So we can see what they potentially could make, but we always give them conservative numbers. So if you're asking for a percentage, some of them are, 1, 3, 7%, but other ones are upwards of 26%. So it depends on the property and how you build it up from the foundation.
Yeah, you got to have multiple outs. You make money when you buy, not when you sell. All right. Give a gift card to the best question. Austin, give a gift card to the best question.
You want to go first, Austin? Okay. I like Kyle's question about the regulation coming from the city of Boise.
Nice job, Kyle. We got a gift card for you. Clap it up for Kyle. Woo! How much is that, Christina? It's a $500 gift card, I think, Kyle. I don't know. I didn't buy it. Who else, Austin? Who gets one? Yeah, he's like, I asked a good question.
I don't remember your name, but I liked your question back there. The front one, I'm sorry, yeah. Yeah, you, no, you, yeah.
Yeah, Kevin. There you go. Clap it up for Kevin. Good job. All right, we want to respect your guys' time. We're going to be hanging out too. I got a couple of things. Don't get up. But let's clap it up for these guys. Thank you for your time. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Get off the stage. Go. All right, you guys get out of here. Go. Get off the stage. We have a vendor spotlight. We want to highlight. Can we get Joey Moxie from the Brute Squad Cleaning Company up here? He's just going to give you a couple of minutes real quick, and then we'll wrap it up. Clap it up for Joey. You guys didn't realize you're going to have much clapping you're going to do. Here we go, Joey.
Hi, you might remember me from over there, pouring your drinks. Yeah, like I said, my name is Joey Maxey. I'm the owner of the Brute Squad Cleaning Company. We're a new brand here in Boise, specializing in move-in, move-outs, specifically dog mess cleanup. We can do one-time move-in, move-ins out, recurring, especially for your short-term rentals property, and really good for some of you guys with smaller portfolios, because my overhead is really low because it's just me, and I can work with you, and we can get your operating costs really, really low. A little bit about me: I worked for the Walmart Corporation for almost 25 years. In that time, I also ran a daycare in my own home, so I know cleanliness standards, quality, things like that. So I appreciate the time, and this was a big surprise to me, so I appreciate you guys, and don't forget to tip your bartender. Oh, wait. Yeah, thanks, man.
Thank you, Joey. Good stuff. All right, real quick, let's bring it home. First off, don't leave. Hang out. Get something to drink. We'll be here answering questions. Again, maybe somebody asks a question. You're like, hey, that Carlos, great question. I got to talk to Carlos. Whatever it is, make a connection. A few things that we got coming up. So we're going to take a break from the meetup next month. So May, I don't know if you guys are, but I'm obsessed with pickleball, and I can't stop playing it. So our fundraiser is going to be a pickleball tournament in May. It's going to be for Boise Rescue Mission. They do a great job. They're all privately funded, and they've been helping a lot of people. So we're going to do a fundraiser for them in May. Again, get on our meetup group so you'll get the invitation for that. June is going to be fun. So last year we did a boot camp, speakers and whatnot. This year we're going to do a self-managing workshop. So we got a lot of investors that do self-manage, and again, we want to keep you out of jail. I get people all the time that are like, oh, I don't want to get the call in the middle of the night, and I'm like, you don't want to get a $30,000 fair housing bill. So if you're interested in that, that's what June is going to be. And then we got a bunch more for the rest of the year. We got a meetup on syndication, evaluating properties, long distance, and building and development. So those will all be good ones kind of the end of the year. So thank you guys all for coming. Have a good night. Thanks.